Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Monday, the 28th day of October, year of our Lord 2019, and welcome to the John Moore Show. We begin our shows with something that many Democratic members of Congress would just as soon was done away with. That would be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Purple tip of the day, winter is nigh upon us. If you're up north, you've already got some taste of winter. You need to winterize your vehicles. These days, it typically means making sure your battery is in good condition, you have good, tight, clean connections. If you don't know what a load test is on a battery, your mechanic probably does. Have them do a load test on the battery to make sure it's got the cranking amps that you need. If there's any question at all, you get the most powerful battery that will fit in that compartment, that battery compartment. The whole charging system needs to be checked out, of course. And while you're at it, make sure that the entire car is checked out, the tires, the cooling system, everything. That would just be a wise thing to do. This is Firearms Monday. We're hoping that Sam Andrews would call in. Apparently, he has not called in yet. If and when he does, of course, we'll bring him on board, and we'll have a discussion as we do on Monday mornings, Firearms Monday. One of our listeners called me a couple of days ago with a suggestion for a caliber pistol that which also some carbines made that would be more suitable for women that have issues with the more powerful handguns. And his suggestion was the .327 Federal Magnum. I've never shot one. I've been aware of it since they came out. They were introduced in 2008. It's an excellent cartridge with very desirable ballistics. I don't know how many pistols are made for this, but there's some, and according to our listener, a carbine, I believe a lever-action carbine is made for it also. So it has a lot of desirable characteristics to it, one of which is the pistol can chamber 5 different calibers, which would include, some of these are antiquated, the .32 Smith & Wesson, .32 automatic Colt pistol, ACP, .32 Smith & Wesson long, and .32 H&R Magnum. So that's a lot of flexibility there. And it's something I think worth checking out and worth looking into. I've noticed over the years, I've been a concealed carry instructor since it first began here in Missouri, and I've been an NRA firearms instructor, pistol instructor since the late 1980s, about 1989, 1990 or so. There's a sizable percentage of adult women in this country who just simply don't have the hand strength to manipulate many of these pistols. And it looks like Sam is here. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, John. Had some technical difficulties calling in, but we're good to go now.
Roger that. I was talking before you came on the air. One of our listeners had a suggestion for women that can't handle the heavier caliber pistols, and he was suggesting the .327 Federal Magnum as an alternative to allow women to have a fairly powerful pistol but still be able to handle it. Do you have any thoughts on that, sir?
Now, did you say the .327 or the .357?
.327 Federal Magnum.
You know, I think that the calibers that are available, I like the .357 Magnum because you can practice with .38 specials. It's a lot more cost-effective to practice, but I think the .327 Magnum from Federal is plenty powerful enough for defending your life. I think it's a good cartridge.
All right. Well, there's here at Wikipedia they mention several firearms that chamber that cartridge. An 8-shot Sparrowhawk made by U.S. Firearms, Ruger, a double-action SP-101, and a GP-100, and a single-action 8-shot Blackhawk, all chambered in that caliber. I understand there's also a carbine, a lever-action carbine, and tambourine caliber as well. It's only been around since 2008, so it's a fairly new cartridge on the scene, isn't it?
Well, and it's difficult to find 8-shot 357s. You may find a lot of different options in the 357 Magnum with a 6-shot cylinder, but having an extra 2 shots in today's environment is not a bad thing either.
Not a bad thing at all. Well, I don't know we need to cover that anymore. It's something for people to check out and look into. And we're all anxiously waiting with bated breath for the firearms tip of the week, sir.
Well, we've got a lot of deer hunters taking to the woods here in the next week or two. I think Missouri opens up in about 2 weeks, our season here. And the firearms tip of the week is to clean your trigger and trigger guard area by separating your stock from your rifle, and clean your trigger, particularly the side plate trigger designs, desperately need to be cleaned more often by almost everyone. So if you have a Remington 700, if you have a Rifle Basics or a Timney trigger or a Jewel trigger, these triggers have side plates and they have levers that operate at very close tolerances inside those plates. And if you don't flush those out with something like Quick Scrub or brake cleaner, get the grit the oil, get any of the residue from your cleaning solvents that have dripped into there over the years, you could have a trigger malfunction, you could have an accident, or you could have a situation where your gun doesn't operate properly and you miss that big buck. So get your stock off your rifle, clean the inside of the stock, clean the action, and flush that trigger guard, that trigger area and trigger guard area out so that trigger functions the way it's designed.
Well, you mentioned using a brake cleaner. A friend of mine used that, and it's incredibly toxic stuff. You need to be in an extremely well ventilated area, a garage with the garage door open, some kind of ventilation fan above the work area to suck that stuff away. That stuff can make you sick if you inhale it, can't it?
Well, there's a lot of solvents out there that used to have trichlor in them, and of course the EPA has nixed that. And it was the trichlor that was really, really bad for you. Some of them now are based with acetone, the same thing that women clean their fingernail polish off with. You don't ever want to breathe solvent vapor, but you have to be careful. Like Quick Scrub makes a polymer-safe product that won't damage your stock, but you want to remove the guard screws, pull the stock off, get the stock far away from the gun, and get a straw on that spray can and really force at high speed solvent into those side plates and trigger area and get that whole thing cleaned out. And try not to breathe the solvents at all, because depending on what type of product you're using, it can make you sick.
Now, I use pipe cleaners and Q-tips to get down those little areas myself. So once you've got this all cleaned out and scrubbed out, what would be the follow-up lubricant?
Well, we don't lubricate triggers that have side plate designs. They're designed to operate with no lubricant at all. So after you've cleaned everything and flushed everything out, you want to make sure that you put the stock back on the rifle. Don't forget your magazine box if you have a BDL Remington or something similar in design. But you want to get your magazine box on the action, and you want to torque your guard screws with a torque meter. In other words, you want to put a certain amount of force on tightening those screws, and then make sure you go and re-zero your weapon after reassembling the gun. Check your zero. Because a lot of times when you take the stock off and put it back on and you re-torque everything, your zero moves. So make sure you've re-zeroed your weapon after you've assembled it. Make sure the trigger and the safety function properly.
Sam, you mentioned something, I believe it was last Monday, Firearms Monday, that I was not aware of, but it makes perfect sense. When these rifles are put away for storage in the safe, that you store them upside down so the lubricant from the barrel won't creep back into the action by having it muzzle up.
Yeah, that's kind of an important thing for a long gun. A lot of people don't know that. They just stick their guns in the safe the way, barrel up with the muzzle pointed towards the sky. And the problem with that is you don't want to store your gun dry. Your barrel should not be stored dry. You should always have a thin coating of synthetic oil on the inside of the barrel and on the outside of the barrel before you store it. And when you store it, like I typically take a paper towel and I fold it like 6 times in half and just keep folding it until I get a thick pad. And I stick that over the center of the barrel on the muzzle end, and I store the rifle muzzle down. And that way, any extra residue or oil will drain towards the crown of the barrel and not into the bedding, into the action, and it will eventually migrate into your trigger system and gum that up. You don't want that to happen. That's why we store these things muzzle down so we don't have issues.
Well, it is so intuitive that I don't know why it occurred to me previously. Of course, all these gun safes have the inserts with just the opposite for the muzzle to be facing up. But it's just so smart and so simple to do. It doesn't cost you a penny, does it?
Doesn't cost you a penny. It keeps things nice and clean. See, here's the thing. Petroleum products have surface tension. And that surface tension allows it to hold and collect grit and dust over time. And so when you store your gun barrel up, all of that cleaning solvent, the thin cleaning bore solvents and the thicker oils that you use to care for your gun, they will literally migrate down into the bedding of your precision rifle. They'll ruin your bedding. But even worse, they'll migrate into your side plate trigger system. And when you start getting oil and dust into those side plates, it gums up, and eventually your trigger malfunction becomes unsafe.
Amazing. Well, this information is cutting edge and will help literally tens of thousands of men and women, because that's with our archives here, there will be tens of thousands of men and women who will get this information and incorporate it into their daily activities with their firearms use and storage. And that's a really good thing, Sam, and we really do appreciate that. I should mention that Sam is the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The Facebook page is Freedom Center USA. The telephone number down there in beautiful Lebanon, Missouri is 417-718-2597. I may just go deer hunting this year. I've never been deer hunting. I simply need to walk out back, and I'll sit at my range here and wait for a deer to walk across, which they do typically several times a day. And maybe I'll get a freezer full of meat. We'll see.
Well, I love to deer hunt. I actually enjoy elk hunting even more than deer hunting, and oftentimes I go out to Utah with a friend to elk hunt. He owns a lot of land out there, and it's just a wonderful thing to do, to surround yourself with things that God made rather than things that humans have made. And you just, after a week of that, you just change from the inside out. It really... It sort of resets your soul and puts you in a really good spot emotionally. And not to mention, you come home with some meat that hasn't been shot up with steroids and hasn't been shot up with drugs like a lot of the supermarket meats that you buy. And we eat a lot of wild game in my house because we have it, and I feel better eating it rather than eating meat from the grocery stores. And the other thing is I take the cuts of meat that I don't like from the deer as much as I do other cuts of meat, and I feed our dogs with that, and they love the deer meat. So
I bet they do.
You can always use every part of the deer,
I bet they do. Well, if you got a question or comment, this is Firearms Money. The call number is 800-313-9443. What direction you want to go next, Sam?
Well, since we're right on top of deer season, we could stay on the hunting thing a little bit.
Let's do
and
that.
talk about some of the common mistakes that hunters make and how to easily avoid them.
Okay, let's do that.
I would say, I've been lucky enough to hunt with some really experienced men over the years. My uncle, my grandfathers, friends that were veterinarians. One of the things that I recall, being an old man and looking back on my hunting career, is I recall hunting with a gentleman who was a veterinarian. He was a horse doctor and a surgeon. And one day I got to see him dress an antelope that he had shot. We were hunting out in Wyoming together, and he had 4 Rapala fillet knives for fishing. And I thought to myself, that's the strangest thing. Why would he bring a fishing knife? He doesn't have a big hunting knife with a gut hook to clean this antelope.
Right.
And I watched this surgeon with 4 tiny little Rapala, the smallest Rapala fillet knife they make. I think it was a 4-inch blade. He had resharpened it so many times they were all about 3.5 inches. But he bought 4 of these tiny little Rapala fillet knives. And John, this man dressed that antelope, deboned it in less than 7 minutes.
Well, he's obviously skilled in his craft, being a surgeon and a veterinarian, and having excellent, extremely sharp tools.
He said to me,
right, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well,
he said what?
He said, big knives don't give you any leverage at the tip of the knife blade. He said it's much easier, takes much less strength to cut with a short knife.
Well, look at a scalpel, how long it is. We have a break. We have 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Jim J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. We're going on a cruise. Great time to be away from the cold and ice and snow. Second week of February. It'll be a lot of fun. Valentine's Day right in the middle of it. So check out the details. If you don't have internet service, you can give Betsy Murphy a call, our cruise director. She'll mail you a nice full-color brochure. Betsy's telephone is 636-530-9502. This is Farmers Monday, visiting with Sam Andrews, the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The telephone number down there in beautiful Lebanon, Missouri is 417-718-2597. Sam, the injuries from accidental discharges and so forth with deer hunting have been going down every year for decades, haven't they, sir?
Yeah, and we don't call them accidental discharges. We call an accidental discharge something in the same class as the Easter Bunny. It's a nice thing to think about. It's just not real. What we call them are negligent discharges. There's no such thing as an accidental discharge. At least I've never seen one. Generally, it's negligent behavior or poor practices in your firearms handling or poor maintenance of the firearm. A lot of these issues with the Remington triggers from years ago, where I think one little boy actually shot his mother with a Remington 700. It was a matter of maintenance and stuff, and the boy dropped the rifle, and off it went, and the bullet went through his mother's torso, and that was it. He killed his own mom, and so, a lot of this stuff is really a result of poor maintenance or just poor handling practices. So learn to clean your gun, learn to maintain it properly, and then handle it properly, and you won't have negligent discharges.
Well, that's good. But from what I've seen, Sam, the decrease in these shootings, these negligent shootings, has been due to the mandatory hunter training safety classes that take place.
Well, and I'm sure that's true. I think it's always worthwhile to go get education. I mean, even if you don't like your instructor, at least you've learned what not to do. And the bottom line is years and years ago, when I was a boy, our grandfathers and our fathers taught us how to handle firearms properly. Now in the United States of America, I think that 80% of boys between the ages of 3 and 15 grow up in a home without a father for more than 50% of those years. I mean, that's a horrific stat in and of itself. But what that means to a hunter or to someone handling firearms or a young man or young woman growing up to learn how to use firearms, there's no father in the home to teach them.
Well, that's I don't know. That's a sea change in our culture, to say the least, and not a good one.
Yes.
I was at the Trump campaign headquarters in St. Louis Saturday briefly, and they were giving space for a meeting for men get-together who were focusing on parental rights for men, which has become a really big issue in this country, to say the least. I don't want to dwell on that too long because it says Firearms Monday, but suffice it to say that there's been a sea change in our culture due largely to two things. That would be financial rewards for women who do not have a man in the house, the husband, father of the children, and the dramatic change in the divorce laws, both of which have caused very adverse conditions for these families. But getting back to Firearms Monday and deer hunting, it's the deer population in Missouri was pretty much wiped out during the Great Depression. It had to be reestablished by bringing in whitetails from another state, and they've been quite successful, haven't they?
Yeah, I think one of the best stories of government success that we have is the Missouri Conservation Commission. They brought back the deer and even more significantly the wild turkey population through really shrewd management, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. Those guys in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 1970s, did a tremendous job managing the wildlife resources, particularly the turkey and the deer in the state of Missouri. They are used, for years were used as an example of what to do when you're managing a turkey population.
Absolutely. Well, turkey hunting is very popular, as is deer hunting. Of course, a wild turkey is typically pretty scrawny compared to the store-bought ones, aren't they?
Well, unless you're down here at the Freedom Center, one evening I walked out of the shop just as the sun was setting and the light was dim, and I looked down the road and I thought, oh my Lord, what is that thing? Is it an ostrich? and it was a large gobbler that had a foot-long beard and was probably 4 feet high.
No kidding. I've never seen one that big personally. We have a break to call.
I hadn't either.
800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. Talking to a man earlier this morning, he wanted to know how to listen live, and I said, well, go to the section of my website, top of my homepage, where it says radio. When you click on there and go to the general page information, you've got how to listen live, which is several different ways: telephone, satellite, internet, YouTube archives, Republic Broadcasting archives, and we're getting more archives posted soon from different platforms. Also, my website, of course, if you have arthritis problems, arthritis pain, you need an energy cleaner. You do, seriously. An energy cleaner. Pretty simple. Size of cigar box, takes 9 D-cell batteries. We're talking to somebody recently who had surgery, and they're using an energy cleaner. The surgery is healing up faster with a smaller scar than it would otherwise. The pain is being reduced rapidly. Energy Cleaner is a marvelous healing device. Check out the details at my website at thelibertyman.com. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's from me to you personally. The mattress pads that go with it, what a combination. Get the two together, get your batteries, you're good to go. If you're already using an energy cleaner, maybe you have a sibling, maybe adult children, maybe small children that need an energy cleaner also. Athletes need energy cleaners, by the way, so they can recover more quickly from the workouts that they do. All the details are at my website where you can place your order using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. This is Firearms Monday. Visiting with Sam Andrews, the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The Facebook page is Freedom Center USA. Or you can give him a call if you need some assistance, some technical knowledge, you want to order a firearm, he can help you there. Sam's telephone number is 417-718-2597. I know in my neighborhood, Sam, deer season is quite an event. Many small businesses shut down because the proprietors have gone deer hunting. And I know locally here, the students at the high school, many of them will have a deer rifle in the back of their pickup truck parked on the parking lot of the high school. And the principal finds out, he may want to buy the rifle, but that's about all that's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a different world when you're not being controlled by the politically correct libtards. And you really have to look back at 30, 40, 50 years ago when most schools were like that. We didn't have school shootings. We didn't have all these problems and all of this talk about banning firearms and confiscating firearms. And people just handled their firearms intelligently, and sometimes they displayed them in racks on the back window of their pickup truck, and everything worked great.
It did. And in the 60s and 70s, racks in pickup trucks with rifles and shotguns were quite common. For a while, I saw decals of those racks on the back windows as opposed to a real. But because of theft, I rarely see. I can't think of seeing a rack with a rifle and shotgun on it for a number of years on a pickup truck. How about you?
Well, Fast forward 50 years, and now we have bands of roving idiots breaking into homes, stealing things, and breaking into cars and stealing things. And it's just a different culture. It's not a gun problem, it's a human problem. And until we solve the human problem and get the family unit restored and get fathers instilling discipline in their children again, it's going to continue to get worse, I'm sad to say.
Well, I agree. Absolutely. Well, I've seen on a Friday before deer season opens up, what looks like quasi-military convoys coming out of the city. Men have their pickup trucks and with trailers loaded with all their camp gear for their deer camp, ATVs, and the whole deer camp thing is a cultural experience in and of itself, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. There's a great book written by a friend of mine who grew up in the city. He lived in a posh home. His father was a wealthy man, and he grew up in a posh suburban environment. And one day, a friend of mine, his initials are JK, asked him to go elk hunting with us in the mountains. And this guy had only shot a .22 rimfire rifle in target competitions. And he'd grown up with a silver spoon, and he'd never been in the woods. He'd never been hunting. And it was the most incredible experience for this guy. He actually wrote a book about it. And that book is published now. And it's one of the funniest things you will ever read. But he talks about traveling with a gun for the first time in an airport, being out in the mountains and being afraid of the bears and not wanting to clean the elk because the sight of blood makes him sick. And he goes through this in such a hysterical way. It is absolutely comical.
It sounds like a fun book to read. Do you know the title offhand?
I'll get that after the next break for you.
Okay. All right. That does sound like a fun book. It reminds me there was a scene in one of my wife's favorite films. What was it? It was a Disney production. Anyway, these girls were tricked an adult female into clicking sticks together to keep the bears away at night. The Parent Trip, that's what it was, the Parent Trip. It was pretty funny. Beat the sticks together to keep the bears away. City people have not been exposed to the forest. Typically, they are frightened, aren't they?
It is a scary thing to be in a completely new environment, but once you understand the environment, you understand that all of these things around you are things that God has made and designed, you realize that you actually fit into that environment very, very well. And it's not an issue at all. And it's nice if you've grown up in the city, it's nice to go with someone, go hunting with someone who has a lot of experience the first time around. They'll keep you out of trouble, keep you from hurting yourself, and point you in the right direction so that you don't get yourself into trouble or get in over your head.
That reminds me, there were two Brazilian ecologists that were at an international conference. This is 40 years ago, and they heard a term they'd never heard before, the rainforest. And one ecologist said to the other, he said, "What are they talking about?" He says, "Man, I think they're talking about the jungle." That's you're in a jungle when you figure out you're not the top of the food chain. But calling the jungle the rainforest is a way for liberals to make the jungle to appear to be something it's not. The jungle is a hostile environment where human beings are not at the top of the rainforest, the top of the food chain, and meant to give a perception that is pretty far from accurate, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're on an operation in a jungle or you're in that area, you really have to have special skills. You don't camp on the ground. There's just so many rules, things that keep you out of trouble, keep you out of the insects, keep you from being eaten alive, basically, by small insects or animals. you really do have to know what you're doing in the jungle. You have to know how to manage moisture in your clothing and in your gear so your feet don't rot. And, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things that you need to know. That's sort of a special skill. It's kind of like mountaineering. There's just certain things you need to know.
Right. Well, Sam, it was more than 20 years after I got back from Vietnam that I no longer stuffed socks in the top of my boots so that I could put them on in the morning and not have bugs inside. You know, it just became a habit. You know, stuff your socks in the top of the boot so the bugs can't crawl inside while you're sleeping. And the first time I woke up, I was back in the States. I reached out and didn't touch a mosquito net. I thought, something's wrong. I'm reaching my hand out, and there's no mosquito net in the way. There's something's really, really wrong there. And, of course, I was back in the States and no longer needed a mosquito net. But it is different. And I was just reading this morning about the operation to take down this Baghdadi guy, this ISIS leader. They named the operation after this woman. I think Kayla was her name. An American female who was on some kind of humanitarian mission that got kidnapped, was held captive and raped and tortured for 2 years before they finally murdered her, the ISIS people. I don't know the young woman, but I know the profile of young men and women, American males and females that go on these operations to these parts of the world wanting to help humanity. She paid for her mindset with her life, obviously. But it was a good thing to name this operation after her because taking down Baghdadi and taking down ISIS is a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and, a lot of people don't realize this, but ISIS was really a construct of the British government, the American government, the Israeli government, and the Saudis. And when Trump took office, he looked at what we were doing and said, well, we created these monsters. We propped them up. We need to do something about this. We can't keep doing this sort of thing as a foreign policy tool. And to get some of these people that are leading these groups out of the way is a great thing. Trump's doing the right thing.
It is. It is. And that's a sign of things to come. I'm really looking forward to January 2021 when he takes that oath of office the second time and no longer has the restrictions that he's currently working under to having to be reelected. I think the gloves come off in January 2021. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Hillary's talking about running again. I don't know if that's going to happen. I know there's just rampant election fraud going on. Some of it's been discovered. The voter rolls have been attempted to be cleaned up by lawsuits through a group called Judicial Watch. It's going to be really interesting. I really hope that Trump doesn't sign on to any gun control because if he does, he won't win the presidency. That'll cost him the reelection. And so I really hope that
he backed off from that. I hope and believe that's not going to change. When he backed off from that recent attempts to get him to support anti-gun stuff. And I agree with you. It will hurt him tremendously. I don't know if it would cost him the election, but it certainly will hurt him tremendously. There's no doubt about that. He will alienate his base and not convince any of the moderates to vote for him. So it's just a lose-lose situation for him. And I hope he's smart enough to understand that, and I believe he is.
So this book we were talking about by Frederick Klecker, this guy, this wealthy kid that grew up in a posh environment, and we goaded him into coming into the outdoors and learning how to hunt as a grown man. The name of the book is Big Game Hunting 101, and it says No Room Service and Other Terrifying Realities. And so this is a humorous book. And, I mean, Freddie has a gift for writing. This man is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. You can go to e3outdoors.com, www.e3outdoors.com, and you can order this book for the man in your life. It's a great gift. It is one of the funniest reads you'll ever put in your hands, and I would highly recommend you get this book because you will laugh so hard you will cry.
Well, everybody needs a good laugh, and maybe I can get a hold of Mr. Klecker and get him here on the show. That would be a fun interview, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, that would be fun. We should do that next week in honor of big game hunting season opening.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that privately. We don't need to be using airtime up on them, and maybe we can make that happen. Well, getting back to deer hunting, we hear about buck fever, where the hunter, male or female, man, woman, boy, or girl, they see the buck and they freeze. Any thoughts on that, sir?
You know, I've never experienced that, and I've seen it happen. I had a buddy of mine. He was a lineman at Mizzou. He was a college football player. He was about 320 pounds, and he could bench press 600 pounds. One of his quads was bigger around than my waist. I mean, this is a big, strong guy, and I mean, he was fearless. I mean, we had been in fights together in high school, and me not fighting him, but him fighting on my side against other groups of guys. And I mean, this guy was just tough and fearless. And I took him bow hunting for elk out in Colorado, near Salinas, and it was just amazing, his reaction. This bull came charging in, ripping trees out of the ground, spitting, snorting, drooling all over the place. And when he got to about 18 yards and stopped and looked at my buddy was at full draw with his bow, and he was locked up. He couldn't pull the trigger. He was shaking so bad. He was just literally frozen right there in fear and couldn't pull the trigger on this beautiful 6x6 elk.
What happened next? We need to know.
Well, I whispered, pull the trigger. Come on, shoot him. He's right there. Drop the hammer. Pull the trigger. And he couldn't fire, and the elk finally winded us and stormed off, you know. But it was, you know, I'd spent 15 minutes cow calling this bull in for him, and he had the most perfect shot I've ever witnessed bow hunting on a big elk, and he couldn't pull the trigger. It was the elk got away. That's the bottom line.
Well, that's a big I guess, isn't it?
Oh, there's a few of those I could tell you about, but that's the closest thing to buck fever I've ever witnessed. I've never witnessed somebody do that on a deer. I think you just need to focus on the fundamentals, getting the crosshair in the right spot and pulling the trigger, and stop thinking about that big buck with those giant horns.
On the other side of the spectrum, a friend of mine, he was hunting with his young adult son. The young adult son had a 303 Enfield. And he said that apparently the son missed the first shot, and his father said it sounded like this boy had a semi-automatic rifle with bolt action. he was reloading so quickly. We have about an hour break. We have a next break. We'll be back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. My friend said his son was shooting a 100-year-old bolt-action rifle as fast as a semi-automatic. Adrenaline can be a marvelous thing, can't it?
It really is literally a gift from God when you're in a situation where you need quick thinking, strength, and you need the ability to react. Adrenaline is an incredibly powerful tool your body uses to get you to perform things that you wouldn't think you could normally do.
Absolutely. Well, the deer season in Missouri, the gun season is, 2 weeks, I believe?
Yeah, probably just slightly less than 2 weeks. It usually starts on Saturday.
All right. But we have quite a few deer seasons here. We got the gun season, we got bow season, we got black powder season. There's a special season for youngsters also, I believe, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a youth season that precedes the standard rifle season in Missouri. So you can take a child out and hunt. They get first crack at the big bucks with a rifle. And bow season's ongoing right now. Our neighbor brought a picture of some bucks that were shot with a bow, some really nice deer that were about, I'd say, between 150 and 170 score-wise. They're really nice bucks, been taken with a bow already this year in our area. So we've got deer running all over the Freedom Center. We don't allow people to hunt on the Freedom Center, but the deer and turkey and bobcats and coyotes are certainly all over the place. There's wild game everywhere around here.
Well, that's just the nature of most of Missouri once you get away from the cities, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'd like to talk a little bit about common mistakes that deer hunters make, and
Please.
a lot of it's common sense. We talked about earlier in the show the veterinarian that I hunted with. He took very short, very flexible, very sharp fillet knives to clean his animals with, and he'll clean a moose or an elk or anything with these little 4-inch long Rapala fillet knives. So I'd highly suggest that you take a couple of those and try those as you go to skin your buck or as you cut in to take the back straps out of the animal. Try that sharp fillet knife and see how well it works. I've never in my life seen anyone clean an animal in 7 minutes, but Doc Holt sure did. And he taught me how. Now, I can't do it in 7 minutes, but it cut the time it took me to clean the animal probably by 70%. Normally, it would take me a lot longer to clean a buck or an elk. And by learning how to debone the animal and by using these small knives, that worked extremely well. I'd highly suggest you give that a try. Throw a couple of those in your pack when you go hunting this year. The other thing that I've noticed is out hunting is a lot of people want to search an area with their rifle scope. And we don't recommend that. We recommend that you use binoculars when you see movement and think you might see a deer, that you use a pair of binoculars to look at what you think might be the animal. We'll talk about that after the break.
Okay, we have a break. We'll be right back.
The Green Beret.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Monday, the 28th of October. Prepper tip of the day. We got wintertime here. If you're farther north, you've already got winter. Be sure and winterize your vehicles. That would mean making sure your battery has the cranking amps that it needs, good, tight, clean connections, charging system's in good condition, your tires are ready to go, the cooling system is ready to go. And if you do live in those northern areas, that you have a winter kit in the vehicle, a couple of candles, some food that doesn't require any heating to eat, a little water, a blanket or two. That would just be a smart thing to do, because if you get stuck on some of these back roads in the wintertime, it can be a very serious, if not life-threatening situation. This is Firearms Monday, visiting with Sam Andrews, the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The Facebook page is Freedom Center USA. telephone number down there if you need help. He's going to be really busy the next couple of weeks dealing with deer hunters and their issues, but he'll put you on a list. The telephone number down there is 417-718-2597. You got a question or comment? You want to call in? The call-in number is 800-313-9443. Sam, I'm curious. I haven't done that much international travel. Does any other country have a phenomenon similar to the American deer season?
Oh, I think Australia and New Zealand, they're strong hunting cultures. Canada has a very strong hunting culture. There's a lot of hunting going on in Argentina, places in South America. I'm not sure that there's the numbers. I mean, when you add up the numbers of deer hunters in the United States, I think it might be over 25 million.
Well, that's a substantial army, isn't it?
25 million people with centerfire rifles, all in the woods in the same 3 to 4 week period of time. I mean, that's an interesting thing to think about. And the thing that most veterans that I know don't hunt deer. And we know we have 18 million armed veterans in this country. And so, when you look at the 70-plus million armed Americans in the United States, that's a large group. That's a powerful, powerful group of people.
It is. I was not aware that most veterans don't go deer hunting. That's now that I think about it, I'm thinking of the veterans I know, and if any of them I know go deer hunting. And, I never thought about it, but I can't think of any of the veterans I know that go deer hunting or even hunting at all.
Yeah, now, General Bob Hollingsworth, a man that I work for in D.C., he likes to elk hunt. He lives out in West Cliff, Colorado, and he's an avid hunter. His son, who was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, gunnery sergeant, he likes to hunt. But I would say that's 2 out of maybe 100 veterans that I have contact with on a regular basis that actually deer hunt. We've got an army sniper that is a member of our range, and he likes to bow hunt for deer. But as I think about it, it's probably less than 10%.
Okay. Any speculation as to why?
Well, my dad was a sergeant in the Army, and when he got back from Vietnam, his attitude was, I'm really not interested in handling guns anymore. I've done enough of that for a while. And I don't know if that plays into it. I'm not really sure. I think it's probably different reasons for a lot of different people.
Well, I had a similar attitude when I got back from Vietnam regarding firearms for probably 3 to 5 years, I imagine. I don't know how long. Combat changes men, and it changes men and different men in different ways, obviously. But between the 18 million veterans and the 25 million deer hunters, we're looking at a substantial number of people, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a tremendous number of people. It's the largest group of armed people in the world, that's for sure. I think that if you count up the veterans that are armed, the deer hunters that are armed, the competition shooters that are armed, the people that have firearms for defensive purposes only, I think you're well over 77 million, and it's growing, particularly in the women's segment. The number of firearms owners is growing dramatically.
Well, I know the manufacturers are stepping up to the plate and working with designers to design pistols primarily, but I assume some rifles as well, that are more desirable for the female customers, aren't they?
Yeah, and a firearm needs to fit you. It's not fun to shoot if it doesn't fit your hand, or if the length of pole is wrong on the stock of your rifle. None of those things. It's not enjoyable to shoot if the firearm doesn't fit you. If it fits you well, then it's just a thing that doesn't take up any of your attention. It's very comfortable. It's very enjoyable. A lot of fun to shoot a good firearm if it fits you properly.
Absolutely. That's part of it also. So We've seen pistols that come out with pink stocks on them, hand grips, and of course, women tend to be smaller stature than men as a general rule, and well, that's a good thing. And it's the expansion of the gun culture and the gun industry. I take that as a good thing. How about you, sir?
Oh, I think it's wonderful, and I think the gun companies should produce products for women. We make AR-15s for women. They have a 625 gas block diameter on the barrel. The barrel's super light. We use a tango down grip that's smaller. We've got a collapsible stock system where they can set the stock exactly where they want it for their length of pull. Super light trigger systems. We even make ammo of a lighter bullet projectile, less recoil, and we run a softer recoil spring. So they can shoot the gun with almost no recoil at all. We set up AR-15s for competition and for women all the time, and it fits them like a glove, and they just love their rifles.
I bet they do. And if there's anybody listening that wants a rifle set up for a woman like this, just give Sam a call at 417-718-2597. Well, we've talked before, but it didn't hurt to repeat it, that a well-meaning man will frequently introduce a woman to firearms in the wrong way, hand them a heavy caliber pistol, a woman the size of a 12-year-old boy. Here, honey, shoot this. And it hurts, it's scary, and they don't want to do it anymore, do they?
Yeah, you can really turn someone off to firearms if you introduce them in the wrong way. When we start with a beginning shooter in our handgun training, we give them a Ruger bull barrel 22 rimfire with a suppressor on it. And that allows them to not fixate on the recoil and the overpressure, because there's hardly any of either of those things. And it allows them to focus on their grip pressure and their sight alignment and their trigger control and the things that they need to develop. And so it's a much better deal to start with an air rifle or a 22 rimfire suppressed when you're starting with a new shooter, and let them enjoy shooting the gun, let them see that they can have success with it, and then let them graduate to larger and larger weapons that have a little more recoil and a little more overpressure.
Absolutely. We got a caller on hold. We got Laura in Michigan. Good morning, Laura.
Hi. Hello, gentlemen. I just want to give you my little hunting story. It might help people. A few years ago, I live back in the state land. A man came pounding on my door early in the morning. He says, I shot my friend. And I said, on purpose? First I said, on purpose. I looked in, He said, we were hunting. I said, okay. I called 911 right away. But we live in an area where it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get any kind of help, So what happened was, I said, I grabbed a blanket, and I said, okay, let's go find him. I mean, to at least keep him warm and everything. He says, I don't know where he is. I said, you don't know where he is? I said, well, how can we go out and help him? So anyway, then finally the police and everybody came, and he couldn't recall at all where he was in the state land. So anyway, they said to spread out all the people that came, and I had to direct traffic, because they had to use me for directing traffic, because everybody was out in the woods to find the man. So finally they did find him, and later I found out they told me they were able to save his leg. But my point is, make sure you know where you are.
Yeah, that's great.
That's good. That's good advice, and the story had a good outcome. We appreciate that, Laura. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for sharing that story. That brings up a really valid point. When you talk about mistakes that people make, hey, we have phones, we have GPS systems. You can mark waypoints with these electronic devices. They are great things, so that if you ever do have a problem, you have to go get help, you know how to get right back to where the person that needs help is stuck. And use your GPS or use your phone. That's a really good point she brings up. And there's a lot of things that hunters do that they shouldn't be doing, and there's some things that they can do that are very simple that will make life a lot easier if you have a problem.
Absolutely. Of course, we don't know how long ago this took place with Laura, and some of that technology may not have existed back then. And of course, deer hunting is only legal, at least in Missouri, during daylight hours, isn't it?
Yeah, you can only shoot. I think it's an hour after sunup and an hour before sundown. I think used to be the rule. It probably is still in effect. I know a lot of people fudge a little bit on that deal, but you do need to see your background behind your target. And I wanted to finish the comment that I was making about how to use your optics. When you're in a tree stand or you're deer hunting, or especially if you're turkey hunting, and you see movement, you think it might be a deer or a turkey, and you're not sure, don't pick your rifle up, point your rifle at the area you saw movement, and look at it through your scope. That's not the first move. What you want to do is you want to pick up your binocular rangefinder or your binoculars and check it out first. It could be a human walking through the woods. It could be someone's pet dog. It could be someone carrying their deer out, of the woods. You just don't know. And so you want to get your binoculars up to your eyes and glass the area and the object for at least a minute. I mean, check it out. Study it very closely. Make sure you know exactly what you're looking at before you raise that rifle and point it at that object.
Well, at the local coffee shop in Cherryville, Missouri, the men occasionally talk about a city boy bringing a goat to the deer check station to have it checked in as a deer that he shot during deer season.
These things happen. I mean, they absolutely happen. I remember standing in line to check my deer years ago, and I got up to the counter. I'd been waiting. There were 12 people in line waiting to check their deer at this gas station here just south of Lebanon. And I got there, and I went to check my deer, and there's this really nice 40-year-old lady behind the counter who was helping all the hunters get their deers checked in. And I handed her my tags, and she processed some stuff, and she asked me a question or two. And I said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "Well, sure." And I said, "You see on the tag where it says 190 pounds and brown eyes?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "How did they know I was going to shoot a 190-pound doe with brown eyes?" And everybody behind me busted out laughing because they knew it was my driver's license information. It wasn't a comment about the deer I was going to shoot. And this lady finally realized I was joking with her, but she looked at me like, "Oh, my Lord, they let you have a gun." It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Well, you interrupted her normal discourse, her normal routine of doing one serious thing to the next serious thing, didn't you?
Yeah, it kind of broke the ice up. Everybody was aggravated from having to wait in line for so long, and I was just trying to break the ice a little and get people to lighten up, and for once it actually worked.
Well, that's good. Good. People that know you as well as I do, sometimes they're surprised at your sense of humor that kind of pops up out of nowhere, Sam.
I like to surprise people with it. My wife thinks I'm the funniest person on planet Earth, but nobody else does. So it is easy to surprise people with something humorous if you're me.
Absolutely. Well, once again, the call number is 800-313-9443. Something that's done commonly, more city boys than my neighbors, is to get a really heavy magnum to shoot a whitetail at 50 or 60 yards, a 7mm Remington Magnum or a 300 Win Mag. That's simply unnecessary, isn't it?
No, you can shoot a deer with a 243 if you want to, or a 223 if you want to, if you need to. Now, the lighter the caliber you go to, the more accurate your shot placement has to be to get a clean kill. But if you do go deer hunting with a 300 Win Mag, don't shoot a 200 or a 220 grain bullet. Shoot a 150 grain bullet or a 165 grain bullet. You'll have less recoil. You'll be more accurate with the round. You'll have less flight time. So any ranging error that you make, you'll pay a smaller penalty, and you'll get better bullet performance when that lighter, faster bullet impacts the animal.
Well, that's good advice, and that would allow somebody to use that heavy caliber rifle and still achieve the results you're looking for, correct?
Yeah, we have a lot of guys with 300 Win mags. They take out elk hunting, and when they shoot deer here in Missouri, we load them up some 125 ballistic tips, and or some 125 the Hornady bullet, the SSTs, and they shoot that bullet at like 3,800 feet a second, and it's so flat, the trajectory, that their maximum point-blank range goes from what's average might be 250 yards to almost 375 yards to 400 yards. They can just hold dead on the animal and pull the trigger. They don't have to hold high, low, or anything. The trajectory's that flat.
Amazing. Here's our break. Call number is 800-313-9443.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. We are going on a cruise. It will be fun. It will be in the dead of winter. What a great time to be away from the ice and snow. Down in the Caribbean, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. This ship has 20 restaurants. 20 restaurants. I'll be going. Leon Green will be with us. We'll have others with us, and you can join us. Details at my website at thelibertyman.com. You can call our cruise director, Betsy Murphy. She'll give you some help there with the details. Betsy's telephone is 636-530-9502. This is Farmers Monday, visiting with Sam Andrews, the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The telephone number down there is 417-718-2597. Sam, you're going to be pretty much covered up the next few days, a week or so, taking care of deer hunters' rifles, won't you, sir?
Yeah, it's really busy this time of year. I've worked, I want to say 25 days in a row without a day off. And that's pretty typical for this time of year.
Well, it is. It's a cycle that we go through, that we've come to know and understand. And I don't know if we'd call it looking forward to it, but as one of my mentors, Mr. Charles Shaw, would say, John, it's our chosen profession. We should not complain.
Oh, I love this time of year. Everybody's excited about getting into the woods. Everybody's excited about getting some time off of work and getting out into nature and taking some great pictures and spending time with friends and sitting around the campfire or deer camp and enjoying the humorous times that allow you to unwind and relax and kind of be a human being again, get out of the rat race for a few days.
For many men, this is their yearly vacation, isn't it? If they got limited vacation time.
Yeah, if you're a hardworking blue collar guy and you get 2 to 3 weeks of vacation, you're probably going to spend 2 weeks of it hunting, and that that's your time off. That's your time to relax and to recharge your batteries and to enjoy life a little bit instead of just grind away.
Well, that's an important time, and I know that it becomes the focus of these men's lives. So they spend basically 50 weeks a year looking forward to those 2 weeks, don't they?
Yeah, it's a really important deal, and it's interesting. A lot of SWAT snipers are actually deer hunters, police officers, and they fight for days off because you can't have the whole SWAT team deer hunting on the same day. And so it's quite the interesting thing to watch the large departments go through the process of how to resolve the manpower issues during deer season.
I had not thought about that, but it makes perfect sense. Of course it does. Well, I'm sure they have creative ways to deal with it and manage to get through that. And they do it every year, don't they?
Yep, it's just part of the process. And, normally I go out and elk hunt in October. I go out west, elk and mule deer and antelope hunt a little bit. And I didn't get to do it this year because of my shoulder surgery. And so I'm really looking forward to getting through this season and getting to a point where I can take a week off, but I think Christmas is going to be the time for me.
All right. Well, now, elk is not quite as big as a moose, is it?
No, there are species of moose that are larger than the largest elk, but they're much, much bigger than deer. I've seen bull elk that weigh 800-900 pounds. And in the moose category, right, in North America, you have like the Shiras moose, and they'll run between 600 and 1,100 pounds. And then you have the big Alaskan moose that I think the large Canadian moose, I've seen bull moose up in Canada and Alaska. They must be 2,000 pounds. I mean, they're as big as a Clydesdale and longer legs.
That's a really big animal, to say the least. And how much usable meat would you get out of that 1 ton?
I've never killed a 2,000-pound moose, but I would say that about 40% of the weight of the animal typically is edible. At least 40% is going to be really, really good meat.
Well, that's going to translate into almost half a ton, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when I shoot a 200-pound buck, I wind up with between 70 and 80 pounds of meat. I think with a 600-pound bull elk, I think we wind up with about 220 pounds of meat, maybe a little more. Like the hindquarters on an elk, they weigh about 90 to 100 pounds apiece. I would say the front quarters probably weigh 2/3 of that. And so these animals vary so much in size depending on what part of the country, what their diet is, what time of year you kill them. There's like 5 species of elk just in North America, and they're all different sizes. Now, I've killed mostly Rocky Mountain elk, but there are smaller elk here, I think, in Washington State and in Oregon, and there's different species. So, it's interesting to study all the various animals. I've even seen hybrids of whitetail and mule deer, and these deer are huge.
Really? Hold that thought. We got a break. Call number is 800-313-9443.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
All right, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. If you want to keep up on what's going on in the world, geopolitical-wise, we have a section on our website right there near the top, Daily Intelligence Briefing. A friend of mine, former intelligence agent, I was explaining that we need healthy Americans to help make America great, to support the president. And if you don't have energy for your favorite pastimes, hunting, fishing, bowling, golfing, you're not going to have the energy to help contact voters. And we need people to make personal calls, talk to these people, get them registered to vote. A disappointingly high percentage of Americans that are conservative Christians are not even registered to vote. Now, I'm making a connection to the energy cleaner here because the energy cleaner, as the name implies, helps you be healthier and, in fact, have more energy. So there is a connection there, a direct cause and effect connection, that the energy cleaner can help you have the energy you want to do the things that you want to do. Get the details at my website. Get your energy cleaner, your mattress pad there at my website using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can send me a check. My address is there. You can call my toll-free hour line 24 hours a day, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. This is Firearms Monday, visiting with Sam Andrews, the proprietor of Freedom Center USA. The telephone number down there is 417-718-2597. Well, Sam, this deer hunting thing is an annual event. I made a comment at the coffee shop in Cherville the other day. Deer hunting was, they were talking about bow season, and I mentioned how some of my hillbilly neighbors that are criminals, they will put a arrow inside a 410 shotgun during bow season and shoot the deer with the arrow out of the shotgun to harvest that deer, which is completely illegal, but it is done, isn't it?
You know, I haven't heard of that technique. That's an interesting thought. I guess if you could get enough pressure to accelerate the arrow, you could certainly make that happen. I know there's a lot of people that have been convicted of nonviolent felonies that are not allowed to have firearms and to hunt, and I think that's a shame. I think if you've committed a nonviolent felony and you've served your time, you've paid your debt to society, you should be able to go hunt and take game, but and you should have your Second Amendment rights restored at some point. But that's a different subject. There's a lot of different ways that people take game illegally. The thing that really bothers me is when people take a lot of animals. If someone shoots a deer, I'm not as concerned about the method they use. Now, if they shoot 10 deer, then they're taking away resources from other people. So I think that, people need to be equitable in their thought process as a hunter and manage the wildlife in their area intelligently.
Well, they do. I was part of the defense team for a man and his adult son who had taken hundreds of game, deer, antelope, and elk and so forth in various states. And I spent some time with these two men, and I think it was some kind of psychosis myself that they were suffering from. But the federal government was prosecuting these guys. I don't recall what the outcome was. But we mentioned earlier in a show that during the Great Depression, the deer herd in Missouri was wiped out to virtually non-existent, wasn't it?
It really was. The commercial hunters and people killing deer for food, it became big business, and they literally destroyed the ecosystem of the game animals in Missouri simply by being greedy and by overtaking. If the population gets too high, it crashes from disease. If you hunt and kill, the predation gets too high and the population drops too low, the animals disappear. One harsh winter and they're gone. And so you need a balance. You need to be in a population range that fits the environment and also fits the breeding cycles and the highs and lows from stress that occur from disease and weather changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know well-meaning tree huggers, for want of a better word, have attempted and have been successful in stopping hunting, for example, and had the direct opposite effect of what they wanted. When they stopped the illegal hunting, all the safeguards and money stops also, doesn't it?
It sure does. And see, that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is it's the hunter's money. It's their resources that provide for the management of game and the stabilization of game populations and herds. And if you start messing with the balance of what nature has, you really have to know what you're doing, or you can cause irreparable damage.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I've also heard a story about well-meaning people who dropped off really rich bales of hay to wild herds, and they would eat till where they floundered and actually ended up in severe distress or even died because of the very rich bales of hay being dropped out of helicopters to them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really have to know the details. If you're going to work with the ecosystem, you have to know the effects of what you're doing to the last detail, because any level of ignorance can wreak tremendous damage on wildlife. The balance is fairly delicate. So if you introduce something that has unintended consequences, those consequences can be dire for a whole population of animals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, these things do happen, and it's unfortunate, but when well-meaning people who are ignorant of what they're attempting to do get involved, you can have very bad consequences.
Yeah, and if you'd like, I'd like to take a few minutes and just run down a list of things, suggestions for deer hunters to consider before they go out into the woods this year.
Well, let's do that. Yes.
Yeah, I would say the number one mistake that I see, the most common thing that I see, is deer hunters using too heavy a bullet and too hard of a bullet. So they're getting these pass-through shots. They're not getting good bullet performance and dropping the animal where they shoot them. A lot of people say, oh, well, I get a good blood trail to follow. And, yeah, you may follow that blood trail into the next county. But use a lighter, faster bullet on thin-skinned game like deer and see how successful you are at dropping the animal within a 50-yard radius of where you shot it. That's a very good thing. You're going to recover that animal every time. The second suggestion I would say, common mistakes, make sure you use your binoculars to glass a potential target before you raise your rifle and point your rifle at that target. You want to know what's there before you point your rifle at it. A lot of people remember Ferguson, where the St. Louis County SWAT snipers were scoping the crowd with their rifles. And we didn't train them to do that. We trained them to use their binoculars and spotting scopes to do hurried searches, and if they found a threat, then to go to their rifle. Same thing applies in a hunting situation. That deer you see going through the woods might be a guy carrying a deer out on his back. And so you want to make sure to get a good look at something with your binoculars before you raise your rifle and look at it through your rifle scope. The third thing I would say are weather-related issues. Wear wool socks, dress light walking into your deer stand, and then put your insulation on. If you sweat before you get to your deer stand, you're going to freeze in your deer stand. So dress light, be comfortably cold walking to your deer stand, and then put your heavy insulation on before you sit down and get in position to hunt. That's a very common.
Early I don't know the exact year, 52, 53 along in there was a unexpected severe blizzard in Missouri that ended up with a number of deer hunters dying because they got caught in this unexpected blizzard and simply were not prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, I always bring extra insulation and bring a waterproof jacket to put over that insulation. And I always buy my waterproof jackets a size large, so they larger than it needs to be if I were just to wear the jacket by itself, because I want that rain gear to be really comfortable. I want to be able to move around in it if it's over insulation. And if it starts snowing or sleeting, it sleeted on Tuesday, or actually this Saturday. Just a couple of days ago, it was sleeting on the firing line at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The wind was blowing 60, 70 miles an hour. We were finishing the deck on the firing line, and it was blowing 60 to 70 miles an hour with horizontal sleet hitting us in the face while we were working. And that weather came up in a matter of minutes. We had light rain at 50 degrees almost all morning long, and then all of a sudden it drops 20 degrees and sleet starts hitting us horizontal. So always carry some rain gear and a little extra insulation.
Absolutely. Well, it's no matter how severe the weather, if you're properly dressed and have good nutrition, don't consume alcohol. And let's talk about that a little bit. There's a lot of deer hunters who think it's perfectly okay to have a fifth of whiskey with them when they're on a deer stand, aren't there?
Yeah, that's a bad mistake. That right there, a lot of the guys that I know that have fallen out of their deer stands, including General Chuck Yeager, they made a mistake or they slipped. But, if you have any alcohol in you, your chances of falling out of a stand go up exponentially. So don't drink and go climb into your deer stand. That's a bad idea.
Well, I have range rules posted at my range that anybody consuming alcohol will not touch firearms or ammunition. They can stand and watch and observe, but they will not be allowed to touch or handle any firearms or ammunition, either one.
Alcohol's a drug. It alters perception. You don't want your perception being altered when you're trying to determine whether that's a deer walking through the woods or whether that's a guy carrying the deer he just shot out of the woods. You don't want to be drinking, and you don't want to have alcohol in you alcohol will dehydrate you. Alcohol will cause all kinds of problems with perception. Alcohol will cause you to fall out of your deer stand. There are just uncountable number of issues you can create if you're drinking, handling firearms, and trying to climb into a deer stand.
Well, I think enough said on that topic. What other helpful hints do you have for deer hunters, sir?
Well, I think using your optics properly, using the right weight bullet for the type of game that you have, carrying some short, sharp knives that give you leverage, like the 4-inch Rapala fillet knives, those are so effective. I'd recommend trying that. Keep a lens cleaner in your pocket so that in case you get moisture or something on your lens, that you can clean it quickly. Have that readily available on an external pocket on your rain gear. Have one readily available on your insulation on an external pocket, so that if you have to get to cleaning a lens, you can do it quickly and you don't miss an animal because your lens is all fogged up or you have problems. There are a lot of companies now have coatings on the lenses that help prevent that, but it doesn't fix everything. So have a good cloth made for cleaning lenses accessible in several jackets on the outside pockets. You can get to them quietly and quickly.
Quietly and quickly sounds good to me. Absolutely. We got time for another call or two at 800-313-9443. Well, the consumption of alcohol at camp should take place after all firearms are secured, shouldn't it?
Yeah, you want firearms unloaded, you want them secured, and if you want to relax and have a drink at the end of a long day of hunting, I don't see any problem with that. You just don't want to have a lot of alcohol in your blood when you're getting up in the morning and going out to hunt. That's a bad idea. I mean, it's a life-threatening idea out west when we're taking guys out into the mountains, but climbing into your stand, it can be really treacherous, and it's usually a compilation of errors that occur that get a guy hurt in the field. He had a little bit to drink, it sleeted a little bit, the stand and the steps up to your deer stand are a little slick, you're a little tired from driving all night, you worked late and then got up to hunt on opening day. All of these things start to add up together, and next thing you know, a guy's got a broken arm, broken leg, or a broken neck because he fell out of his deer stand.
That's right. The things stack up, and all the safeguards in place get stripped away one at a time until the person gets injured.
A lot of bow hunters use a harness when they're in their stand,
right,
in case they slip and fall. And a lot of gun hunters don't use a harness. And the other thing you want to do is take your bolt out of your gun and zip it up in a pocket before you climb into your deer stand. And when you get up, you get all your insulation on in your deer stand, and you sit down, you unzip that pocket, pull that bolt out, and make ready with your weapon system. But, you know, climbing into a tree, get your harness set, get all this stuff done, then load your weapon. Don't climb into the tree with a loaded gun and a closed bolt. Don't do it.
Well, that's good advice, and that could certainly save some tragedies from happening, just doing that simple thing.
Yeah, I was hunting with a guy, and we were in a large stand where you could fit 4 hunters, but the two of us were climbing up into this stand. And I said, "Is your gun loaded, your bolt closed?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "But it's on safe." Climbing up into the stand, he bumped his safety and bumped it off safe as he was climbing up.
And what happened next?
Nothing. But when we got to the top of the stand, I said, "Look at your safety," and he was really surprised.
I bet he was. We got our last break. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 28th of October. Well, Sam, we're down the last few minutes here. We're getting out some really good information for these deer hunters, and we'll continue this next week, won't we, sir?
I will. I'll talk to Mr. Klecker about next week and see if we can get him to call in and talk a little bit about his hunting experiences as a new guy that just started hunting, I think, in his mid-30s, and what that experience was like. That might be a lot of fun.
I think it would. I think people would enjoy that. I know I'll look forward to it and enjoy it myself, and it'll be a hoot here, because most people start when they're in their sub-teens, when they first start hunting. So, as a mature city boy adult, he would have quite a different perspective, obviously.
Yeah, and it's very humorous. I mean, I think everybody will enjoy Freddie a lot. He's a funny guy, and he's very articulate in how he speaks, and he's got a really different perspective than guys like you and I that grow up with men that hunt and shoot and were military types and that kind of thing. So I think it'll be a really interesting thing to talk to Freddie. The other thing I thought about from a hunter's perspective, I've been using these headlamps. They attach to your insulated hat or your hat with like a headset.
Right.
They are the handiest little thing going. These new LED headlamps. If you go into the woods without one of those, I mean, you're really missing out. These things are really handy. You'll use them getting to your stand, getting your deer out, in the dark. It's just very, very useful. You don't have to hold a flashlight with your hands.
Yes. I've got a set of those. I have not had the opportunity to need them or use them yet, but they're incredibly bright, very lightweight, and very effective, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're not that expensive. You can get a really nice headlamp, LED headlamp, that adjusts in brightness to 4 or 5 different levels for $50, and they go up to almost 1,000 lumens, or maybe a little over 1,000 lumens. I mean, they're unbelievably bright on their brightest setting. I actually cut the lawn in the summertime in the dark. After the sun goes down and it cools down a little bit, I go out with this headlamp, and the headlamp on 1,000 lumens is 10 times brighter than the headlights on my lawn and garden tractor.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, Sam, I want to thank you for being with us, sir, and look forward to you and Mr. Klecker being back with us next week. That'd be great, a lot of fun.
John, thanks for having me. Hey, let freedom ring and never forget the good guys win.
Absolutely. Okay. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have Mr. Steve Ben Noon with us. He's a regular Tuesday guest, not every Tuesday, but most Tuesdays, followed by Leon Green. Tuesdays are always great. Wednesdays, we'll have Professor McCanny talking about the myriad of things that Professor McCanny gets into. First hour, and my friend talking about the International Communist Conspiracy on hour 2, Mr. Jeff Nyquist. A great week as usual, and new things at my website all the time at thelibertyman.com. So looking forward to a great week with all of you, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with Mr. Steve Ben Noon. That's it for the day. Get your medical supplies, your energy cleaning, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms ammunition. Never ever give up your guns. Please